wish you'd understand. I just wish that God had a better plan. I'm so confused. I need a redo. Inside of me that's begging and begging and pleading. I just wanna feel free. I just wanna feel lovely. I'm surrounded by love that's in pain. Can I wipe your tears away? Please don't hurt for me. I hate that it's for me. It's for me.
Hi, welcome to the Michigan Man 64 podcast. Thank you to Amber K for that amazing introduction into the show. Amber K is warrior number 2. She is a singer-songwriter that wrote I Hate That It's For Me. Please check out her episode. Me and Amber have teamed up just to try to help people understand what it's like living with a chronic disease and how you have to keep on fighting the fight every day. My name is Brian. I am the Michigan Man 64. Before I got diagnosed 28 years ago, I was playing football at the University of Michigan, and I went from living that lifestyle to 4 years after that being diagnosed with MS, and I talk about my journey as well as the journey of other chronic disease warriors around the world just to try to help people understand what it's like, how it affects your mental health, how it affects your family, how it affects your career. Today, I am talking to a return guest that I recorded with before I started with Hail Media. Jen is from Virginia. She was diagnosed with her MS in 2023, and she recorded with me on episode 89. She is a badass. She's only been diagnosed for 3 years, but like I said, I've known Jen for about 2 years, year and a half. And just to see where she was and where she is now and how she keeps on fighting the fight. Specifically, I wanted her to come on and talk about her journey with her disability. She just got done with a hearing, and I know the outcome of it. And she said she wanted to come on and talk about it just to try to help people to understand just living with a chronic disease, trying to go through the system. So please welcome back to the podcast, Jen. How you doing today, Jen?
I'm good. How are you? It's good to be back chatting with you. Happy MS Awareness Month. I'd say we're pretty aware, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I've been aware. I've been aware for about 28 years now, going on 29. So, that's what we're doing, Jen. We're trying to spread awareness, just talking about what it's like living with our disease. And I really appreciate you for joining me today.
Of course, anytime.
So, Jen,
happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. So I let me ask you, I know you just got done with your disability hearing and I know the outcome of it and everything, but can you kind of just to let everybody know how you started your journey with your filing and all that and to the point you're at today?
All right. So going back, I guess it would have been, I'd stopped working back in about February of 2023, just prior to getting diagnosed. So I wasn't completely done working, but I was struggling at work. And at the time I had thought that it was long COVID, and, I just I'm going to get better, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this, just a little recap from the last podcast. But after I was out with, what I thought was just COVID, for a good amount of time, my boss had decided to close down the business, and she was going to, she was handing over all the clients to me and my partner. And, again, I thought that I had long COVID. So, I was super excited. I thought I was getting better, and I invested in myself and everything that I needed to run that business. I was going to go into business with my best friend, and then, I went in for that MRI and had all the testing done. And about a month later, learned that I had MS and the issues that I was having with overheating and the dizziness and my balance and fatigue and using stairs and things like that were not going to go away. It wasn't just long COVID, it was, the MS.
Right.
So I, had to turn that, everything that I'd worked for. I'd been at that job for 14 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And, I had to turn it down and return everything that I had bought, that I had to run that business, because there was no way the amount of mental and physical stress that was going to put on my body and the already existing issues. I just knew that it wasn't a good idea. And so then I made the tough decision to, apply for disability. And it's been a long, rough road so far, between the doctors and, Social Security. I started out, you do the usual, you apply, they go over all your, answers to the questions that they ask you, and, then they give a decision. So I think I did that about 3 times.
Yeah.
And got denied every single time. And so then, I appealed. Obviously, I wasn't giving up. What else am I going to do? I can't work.
Yeah.
And then moving forward, a couple of years, because it took at least 2 years to get to 2.5 years to get to even hearing status. And then I finally got to that, and I panicked because I was like, I still don't have a lawyer. And I tried to get one originally when I first got diagnosed, but I didn't have the, the medical history and the documentation that they wanted,
Right.
to accept me.
Right.
And so I just kept trying to do it all on my own. And then I had this friend, his name is Bob, and he's no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago from cancer. He was a first responder in the World Trade Center, 9/11, and he had gotten cancer from it. But I remember that he had gotten diagnosed the same time as I got diagnosed with MS.
Mm-hmm.
And, he kept asking me to get a hold of this attorney, this company in Florida, and kept bugging me, you should try these people, that they got me my disability. And, it was a thing that he asked me every time he saw me up until the day that he passed away. And I never did, because I wanted to be local. I wanted to be with people that I could meet face to face, and have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And then, my hearing was coming up, and I was like, well, I need help, and I was like, Bob, I'm counting on you, and I'm going to take your advice, and I'm going to call them. And, they quickly approved me, and I was like, great, I have a lawyer. Hearing came up, and, all of a sudden, I'm on the phone, because it's a telephone hearing, wasn't in person because of distance.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there waiting, and my attorney doesn't show up.
Wow.
So the whole hearing that, that I had been waiting for was canceled and had to be rescheduled, because they, said that they weren't aware that I had a hearing. And so then it got rescheduled to a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember the exact date, but it was in February. And that whole thing right there was just a mess. The only communication that I had with my attorney the entire time was through the mail and emails and text messages and videos that they had recorded for me to watch about a week before my hearing.
What are they saying that the reasoning that they're denying you? I mean, they're not debating the fact of whether or not you have multiple sclerosis. What are they saying? Like you have MS, but you're not disabled enough, or it's not affecting.
I haven't gotten to that that answer
yet.
Gotcha. I'm still awaiting. But going back, I was supposed to talk to my attorney. I would assume more than what I had. So, first he doesn't show up for the original hearing.
Wow.
The second hearing, I talked to him about a week before my hearing, and he says, tells me what I should do, what I shouldn't say, and this and that. And then he says, I'll watch these videos that I sent you. And then he says, I'll get a hold of you the day before, we'll talk again the day before your hearing. Yeah. So I wait, he called me the day before my hearing. It was pretty early, and I missed his call. So I called back, and I didn't get a response, so I left a voicemail, and eventually he called me back and he was like, "Oh, I think I have the wrong phone number." And he hung up before I could even say, "No, you have the right phone number." And then I tried to call back multiple times, never got a response. So I went into my hearing the next day, having only talked to my attorney one time
Wow.
during the entire thing, for maybe 20 minutes. He knew nothing about me. I don't think that he took the time to learn anything about me. I think that there were thousands of other cases, because this is a big practice,
Yeah.
it's not just your
Right.
local lawyer, so
Yeah.
I don't think that I was nothing, they weren't going to try as hard for me. They have,
Yeah.
100 other people lined up to take my place,
Right.
and, I went through the hearing, which was very, he told me not to have any stimulants, the morning of or whatever. And it didn't matter, fun fact, if you have an anxiety disorder,
Right.
it doesn't matter whether you have stimulants or not. You're going to sound like you're stimulated,
Excellent.
I feel like the judge asked me better questions than my attorney did. He, his argument, he tried to make it sound like I lost, I gave up my dream job of being a house cleaner. I was like, there had to have been a much better way of wording that, like, hey,
Yeah.
she worked at this job for 14 years to, work towards something, to own her own
Own
business.
her own
And
business.
she achieved that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, who would give that up to settle for disability? Like, I don't know. There's just such a better way. How are you going to glorify
Right.
something, like who dreams of being a house cleaner? No, I dreamed of being a business owner and eventually, having people work for me, not,
Right.
and I made it. So why would I give that up? But he did a very poor job at, defending me. So they go through the whole thing and they ask you all the questions about what you can do. And you want to talk about it as if it's your worst day. You want to give precise answers. For example, if they say, how often do you have to use the bathroom? And, you don't want to say a lot. You want to say precise numbers, and again, on your worst day.
Yeah.
Not a good day. You don't ever speak of the good days because they will use them against you. I think that I spoke way too much. I don't think that helped me. My honesty doesn't do me any favors,
Yeah. And you don't know the system, and you're answering questions. So, and attorneys know how to twist your words, and I mean, I worked in the system for 20 years in the prison system, and I know what it's like, and I know what attorneys are like, and I don't really know too many attorneys that I trust or can actually say I like. And they're all out for one thing, money, and they want to make their side the right side. You got one side arguing for it, one side arguing against it, and who's going to win the debate? And it's crazy what we have to go through. And I know, like you said, you paid into the system for years. You got your work credits, and you don't want to give that career up. I know I was very similar in my journey. I didn't want to give up a 20-year career with the state of Ohio. I only had 10 years left to be able to retire. And, I'm like, why would anybody want to give up their ability to work so that they can go and basically cut your salary sometimes in 2/3 and expect you to live like that for the rest of your life and have hospitalization and I mean, nobody wants to do that, and but it's sad what we have to go through.
Yeah. So they went, through all their questions that they were going to ask me. And then it moves on to a separate part where the lawyer and the vocational therapist that's, on the other side or whatever. I don't understand their lingo. It was, which I was told, that they would have their own little conversation and I wouldn't understand much of it or whatever.
Right.
And then the judge looks at everything that has been said and, takes into consideration, what my limitations are and, and what I can and cannot physically or mentally do. And he had listed something like, no extreme temperatures. another fun fact for those that don't know, people with MS, we don't regulate our body temperature very well. And what is it called? They call it Uthoff's phenomenon, or something like that. But it doesn't have to be an extreme temperature for us to overheat.
Oh, yeah,
it's just
exactly.
or even for him to be like, oh, no extreme temperatures.
Right.
I wish it worked like that.
Yeah.
I could be in an air conditioned house and just, overheat for no reason.
And it goes the other way too, Jen. I mean, some people can't handle the cold too. I mean, temperature with MS when you have that the nerve condition. I mean, it goes both ways. I mean, to extreme heat, extreme cold. And the judge don't understand that. I mean, he doesn't have the disease. No. He doesn't get that, or she, I mean, they don't get that.
No, not at all. But, he gave all the limitations in that to the vocational therapist. And then it's their job, to find jobs that you can still do based on those limitations. And that lady had said that I could be a price marker or a mail sorter.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out in what world, I can consistently do that on a regular basis. It was like the amount of time you were allowed to miss for those specific jobs per month was 10%, which is one day a month. And now I'm looking at a POTS diagnosis as well. And for those that don't know what that is, it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So it has a lot to do with like positional changes and things like that. And, blood not circulating the way that it should. So when you get up or bend down or, you get dizzy and lightheaded, and sometimes people pass out for it. It's an extreme increase in your heart rate. It just jumps,
right.
high for absolutely no reason. And there are ways to manage it, but there's no cure, like you can up your sodium and your water. It brings up the blood volume to keep that blood pushing from, your feet up to your heart. You can do compression and things like that.
Right.
But, things like standing in one spot for too long, are impossible for people who have POTS, because the blood isn't circulating. So you start and it also causes fatigue and things like that, which is a really big symptom with MS.
Yeah.
And so the two together.
And that's on top of your MS too. Yeah, Jen. I mean, you got multiple diagnoses and they're sitting here, kind of like, picking you apart and kind of critiquing you and telling you what you could still do. I know I went through a similar thing. I was 26 years with this disease when I went through disability and all that, and I got denied. And I'm like sitting here going, well, how disabled do you guys want me to be? I've been fighting this disease for 26 years. I've gone through a cane, a walker, a wheelchair. The state of Ohio has already said that I was disabled back in 2015, but you guys are telling me I'm not disabled enough. It was a joke. When I had to go through that appeal process and all that, they finally ended up approving me. But it was just, the whole process was just a joke.
Yeah, it's been a lot. It's very frustrating. I kind of snickered when I heard her say that, and I probably shouldn't have, but it's like, it was just one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever heard, even with my cognitive issues. Like I have mild neurocognitive disorder, which is, they found that in a neuropsych test, and it's due to the, lesions that are in my brain from the MS and the damage that it has done. And it affects my executive functioning, my decision making, planning, memory, like a lot of the things that you need to work, and you don't want me in charge of your mail. I promise you, it's going to go somewhere it shouldn't, because I'm not going to see the number correctly, or I'm going to be extremely slow. So I hope you enjoy getting your mail a couple days later, or I couldn't that day, I'm not there. Like, there's no way I could do that consistently. I have a hard enough time just taking care of myself in my own house and going to physical therapy and keeping up with doctor's appointments and meds and my own physical health. And, it's just a long list. And
I know that's just crazy, Jen. I mean, you got somebody that has worked her whole life. You got enough work credits. You're just asking for what you've paid into, and they're sitting there turning you down. And that is just part of, you're a single mom. you're a single mom and you've been going without any kind of an income for, it's going on 3 years now. And that is just part of the mental part of the game that people just don't understand, that what we have to go through. I know I've been through that, and I was married when I went through that. And I just can't imagine, how you're battling this every day and still remain as positive as you are, Jen. I know I said back in the beginning, I knew you when you were a year and a half in on this journey and where you were and where you're at now, and you just still take everything so positive. But I mean, it's just crazy what you're going through, Jen.
Thanks, Brian, first off for positive isn't something that I'm called very often, but I've been working on it, for a while, and I'm getting better and people notice. But yeah, I went from working all the time, taking care of everything, the house, the grocery shopping, going to work, raising my son, and to having him take care of me and not working, and, pretty much feeling helpless, and just depending on everyone else. I've always been a very prideful person. I've always been the one that does everything for everyone else, and mostly putting myself last, and I wasn't a priority.
Yeah.
And having MS has taught me that, I have to put myself first. I have to think of me. I have to think of my own health, as prideful as I am. Things are tough and they're only getting tougher. And this was supposed to be it, but it didn't end up working out that way. I ended up getting a text message, I think a week ago, a text message, not a phone call, a text message saying that, I had been denied. This is by my attorney, saying that I had been denied, and, they're not sure of the reasoning, might be not enough medical evidence, and that they were closing out my case. I could appeal, and they wished me the best of luck, just gave up on me. So now here I am, was hoping that this was going to be it. I've been fighting this for 3 years and thinking that I was finally going to get back on track, and that, I could offer my son some help because he's drowning, it's a lot of stress. I need to be able to pay rent. I need to be able to have food, I can't even get any help with that. So that's, where I'm at. I'm now looking for a new attorney. I'm having to appeal. I'm going to have to try to figure out how to manage all this because, and I got to remember my friend Bob out there, who not very happy with you, Bob.
Yeah, right. So Jen, and you're joking about it and you stay positive, and you just trying to stay as positive as you can with this. I went through a stretch just like you're going through a couple of years ago. And, I'm the same way as you, prideful. I played football for the University of Michigan. I've always been independent. I've never asked people to pity me. I've never asked people to really help me all that much throughout my journey. And, when I lost my ability to work a couple of years ago, I was basically fired because of my disability by a hospital system in the Cleveland area. And I contacted the University of Michigan. They got an organization called FAM. Andy Borowski's a former player like me. He played a few years before me. I called him up and said, Andy, man, I've never wanted to do this, but I need help. And FAM actually, they picked up a former athlete like they do, whether you're a male or a female. That's just what FAM's about. They take care of the former Michigan athletes, and they put together a GoFundMe in my name, and just like the help and just came pouring in. And I mean, it made me cry. Just like people that cared that I didn't even know that really knew me. They just knew my story and what happened. And it helped my wife and I out a lot, Jen.
That's amazing. And you deserve it. You're an amazing guy, and people see that, and,
I definitely think that, somebody in your situation, Jen, I think that there's a lot of people out there that would be willing to help you out. I know that I would give you whatever I can to help you out. Because you didn't ask for any of this. I mean, you've wanted to live out your dream of owning a business and MS is, kind of got in the way of that. And you're trying to do things the right way. You're trying to get the help from the government, and you're getting denied. I think you should do a GoFundMe, Jen.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I actually have one. It was my really good friend, Becky, who is absolutely amazing. I don't know what I would do without her. She actually had started one for me last year. I think, yeah, it was in July because it was for my birthday. And it was, set at a very low amount because, it was expected that I was going to go into my hearing in September, the one that my lawyer didn't show up for.
Right.
And I would only, need the help until then, and then things would finally get back on track. And now here we are in March and I'm denied, and, I'm back in the same boat again, where I've been stuck for 3 years. So, but yes, that GoFundMe should still be up. I believe it's on my Facebook page and it is public.
Okay. And if they
I
want
should go through and do an update on that, on the story. And
if they wanted to search you on the GoFundMe, Jen, what would they have to put in?
Jennifer Binder is, I believe, what it is set up under.
Okay. I will definitely put that in the podcast description. If there's anybody out there that's listening that, just understands what we go through, and if you are able to help Jen out, I would really appreciate it. I think, Jen, you are, like I said before, you're an amazing lady. Just a strong lady. I know that you go in and do a Facebook group for newbies, and you're very involved in that, and you're very active in our community. I know people that actually think that you're an amazing lady, just how strong you are, and you're a fighter, and you keep on going. And I just love everything that you're about, Jen, and I really appreciate you for coming on today, and I'm hoping that we can get some help for you.
I appreciate that, and you, and it was so great to do the podcast with you, and I hope that I'm able to help some people out there who haven't went through that system yet, or are trying to, and trying to navigate that and don't know where to start. Just be honest. Talk about your worst day. Get all the medical evidence that you can and document everything, because that is like the most important piece of your case and your disability, is making sure that you have that medical documentation. And if you don't have doctors that are, that are backing you, then you need to get rid of them and find ones that will.
Absolutely. I know we talked about this before, Jen. I'm very fortunate that I've had a couple of really, really good neuros that have taken care of me in my 28 years. And when I did get denied and I showed that letter to my neuro, and he looked at it and said, "Brian, this is a joke." He said, "Hold on a second." And he wrote a letter on my behalf saying, you need to reconsider Brian Wallace's decision that you made on him. And he said my EDS score was this, and I turned that in with my appeal, and I got it approved. But why did I have to even fight that? I mean, I've been fighting this disease for 26 years, and I'm appealing a denial. It was mind-boggling to me. And I hope that you keep on fighting, because you deserve everything that you worked so hard for, Jen. And I really appreciate you for coming on. If anybody can help you out, I hope that they can do that. Like I said, I will put that link in the description. So that if anybody can do that, they will for you, Jen. I really want to thank you for coming on.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Brian.
All right. I'm going to get going. Please, if you can help Jen out, we're everyday people that we are fighting this fight. We're trying to figure it out. Jen is an amazing lady. She is really, really active in the MS community, just supporting people that have this disease. And please hit the subscribe button on the podcast, share it out. We want to be understood. I mean, this is real life stuff, and that's why I'm doing this. And please share it out. This is the MS Michigan Man 64. I am out.